Hey guys, it's Tim and Chelsea from Vanilla Gorilla Athletics. We're here at Vanilla Gorilla headquarters today. And we just thought it would be fun to do a video since you don't know either one of us very well. Today we're going to focus on Tim and he's going to tell us a little bit about his story. So yeah. So we'll start with what first drew you to the weight room.
So when I was my whole childhood that I can remember, I was born in 1976, I grew up in the 80s when wrestling was really, really big. So Hulk Hogan, Ultimate Warrior, those were sort of the first athletes that made a real impression on me. Big, muscular, macho, people went crazy, they look like superheroes. And I knew even when I was like 6, 7, 8 years old, I used to pose, like I would do the thing that Hulk Hogan did after all of his matches. And so I didn't know when I was like 7 that you had to go to the weight room to make that happen. It was right around the age of 12 or 13 is where I really I started to understand that to get those great big muscles, those guys were spending a lot of time in the gym. So that right around the age of 13 is where I found my first gym experience. I talked my mom into getting me a membership at the YMCA in Belleville. Belleville's a very, very small town in Ontario where I was born. And the gym there was like an old prison gym, like those rusty weights, broken concrete floors. It was super low rent, but I thought it was awesome. So 13 years old, I talked my mom into getting me my first membership at the YMCA.
So then I'm sure that everybody wants to know the answer to this question. So where did the nickname come from?
Vanilla Gorilla?
Yeah.
So we'll have to fast forward a little bit. When I was 17 years old, I got my first opportunity to work in a gym, and it was a co-op position. So there was a gym in Belleville called Four Seas Fitness, and there was two brothers that ran it, and they were both jacked. And they looked like the two guys off of Family Guy, the bald. They both had big, crazy handlebar mustaches, and one was my good friend Brian, who at the time was an ambulance driver, but he looked like a cartoon character when he got out of his ambulance, with just muscles, and like he was so jacked, but a super nice dude. And my mom was a nurse in the hospital, so my mom was amazing, and she was always talking about what I was interested in. So Brian was like a giant deltoid. So as soon as I started talking about having an interest in working out, she started mentioning it to Brian. So by the time I was 17, he was like, "Hey, we're looking for a co-op student. Do you think your son might be interested?" So I totally was. Now, it's worth mentioning, and we'll get into the story in a second, I didn't look, like I started working out when I was 13, but you couldn't tell. Like I had horrible eating habits, and I was well on my way.
We'll put some pictures here somewhere.
Yeah, so just to give you a visualization, when I was 17, right around the time I met Brian, I was almost at the heaviest time in my life. So my heaviest weight was actually 338 pounds. So when I met Brian, I didn't look like a guy that worked at a gym. I didn't look like a guy that had a gym membership. But he was really kind to me. Everybody there was really good. And nobody judged me for being very, very obese. But he's like, there's a rule, like everybody here has a nickname and you can't make it up for yourself. So I was like, and I've been called lots of awful names. Like the kids are cruel to each other. So I had a bunch of nicknames that were related to being fat. And I didn't like any of those. And he was like, leave it with me for a couple of weeks. I'll come up with something good. And then one day he's just like, look at this Vanilla Gorilla. And I was like, I don't hate that. And he's like, perfect, that's your nickname. And so when I was 17 years old, that's how I got that nickname. Brian gave it to me.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So was there a specific wow moment or an aha moment when you knew it was time to change?
Yes. So that same year, when I was 17 years old, I played rugby. And my rugby coach was also my biology teacher. It's a funny little English guy named Colin Dingle. So in Mr. Dingle's biology classroom, he had one of those big old grain scales, like from way back in the day. Like literally, it was originally for weighing grain. It had a big brass needle on it, and it read all the way up to 450 pounds. So I get wherever it was used back in its heyday, you would throw big bags of grain on it that weighed 200, 300, 400 pounds, and that's how they would weigh them. We needed a great big scale. So my biology partner at the time, my buddy Tom, he played prop on the other side. Like we played rugby on the same high school team. I was tight head prop, he was loose head. So he was a pretty big boy, but I had him by a few pounds. So one day, right before class, he goes, we were talking about like training and stuff, and he goes, "What's your weight at?" And the last time I'd been on the scale, I think I was around 315 or 320. So I was like, I don't know, the last time I was on scale was around 320. So I was like, I guess it's maybe around there. And he's like, oh, jump on Dingle's scale. So I did. I stepped onto this grain scale, and the needle sailed past 315 to 320, and it topped out at 338. And that moment, even my 17-year-old mind knew if I didn't start making some changes, I probably wouldn't live to see 38. Like, it was just, that was the moment. Seeing that scale at 338, because he was like, oh, dude, wow. And I was like, yeah, and I laughed it off, but that was my moment.
So what did you do after that?
So I always worked out. I would go to the gym right after school every day. So when I went to the gym that day after that class, I knew in my mind I just started making some changes. So I went and worked out, and as soon as I went home, I had a stack of Muscle Media and Muscle Mag International and all those magazines from back in the day that, depending on how old you are, you might remember those as well. So I started, instead of just flipping through the pages like I typically would and looking at the workouts, I started reading the articles on nutrition and supplementation that I've been skipping over for years. Like I would just get to the workout because I wanted to look like those guys. So I thought all you had to do was work out like those pros, and that's not the case. So it was, the first thing I did was starting to acquire knowledge for myself about better nutrition habits and supplementation. That was the first thing that I did. I knew that I needed to be smarter in that area. So that was the first step that I took.
Okay, so we've all, if you've been through this process, I'm sure we've all faced our own battles. So the next question would be, did anything impede your progress, or what were your challenges?
So yes, well, I already had very, very unhealthy eating habits. So I don't want to throw my family under the bus here. My mom loved me so much. My mom was incredible, and so was her mom. So the house that I grew up in, it was, if I didn't eat like a big plate of food, and this is as far back as I can remember, if I didn't eat a whole bunch of food immediately, and my grandmother lived in my house too, whoever got to me first, it would either be my mom or my grandmother, and they would immediately be like, did you get in a fight at school today, or are you in trouble, are you upset?
Because
like,
you didn't eat enough?
You won't, yeah, how come you're not eating more? So, and it was because maybe it's an Irish thing, or like when my mom was growing up, they didn't have an awful lot. There was 9 kids under one roof, and the way that my grandmother, and then my mom was the same way, one of the ways that they would express love is they would feed you. So one of the ways, and you know, probably a lot of people can relate to this, people show each other affection in the kitchen, you know, so try this, you know, have more of this, you know, fill your belly, fills my heart, that kind of thing. So I had gotten used to everything was a single serving. So learning to portion control, that took some time, that was difficult, but also one of the negative side effects of growing up with very low self-esteem, which is what happened, one of the things that leads to low self-esteem, I found anyway, is being obese. I just got tired of being picked last, or picked on, or not picked at all for things. So I found comfort in alcohol way earlier than you should, like 12, 13 is when I started drinking. And so that really didn't help. So I was making lots of unhealthy nutrition choices compounded by lots and lots of alcohol. So I struggled with that. It took me till I went away to college, I think. So probably from the age of 17 to just about the age of 19, it took me that amount of time to go from 338 pounds down to around probably 300. When I went away to college. And then when I got home from my first year of college, and I still drank probably more than I should have in college, but my nutrition was quite sound. And I trained hard every day. There was a Gold's Gym right across the street. It's now a Good Life Fitness, I think, but it was right across the street from where I lived at Oxford and Adelaide in London. And I went to the gym every day, sometimes twice a day. So when I came home from my first year of college, I was about 275 to 280. And in pretty good condition. Like at 275, you could see my abs when I was 21 years old. And that was with no performance enhancing drugs. And truth be told, they are part of this story. But at that point, when I was 21 years old, I was very, very powerful. I had a lot of muscle, and I did it all with good nutrition, hard work, and good supplementation.
So how did bodybuilding become a passion?
So,
And when, I guess?
the truth, I had always been a fan of bodybuilding from as far back as I could remember because of the muscles, but I never aspired to be a bodybuilder until somewhere around the age of 20 to 21. I started to sort of romanticize the idea of going from being the fat kid in my high school, or in my town really, to stepping on stage in a bodybuilding show so that I could say I went, in my mind, sort of from worst to first. Like I would sort of bring closure to that story. The fat kid became the bodybuilder. So I decided that I wanted to do a show with no intention of ever doing one again. And then truth be told, and this is really important, probably a lot of people have struggled with this, and I can say from firsthand experience in over 20 years of competing in bodybuilding, the training is the easy part. It's so easy. Even the cardio is a breeze. It's the going to bed hungry for weeks and weeks and weeks. That's really difficult. And I went from one of the upsides to being fat, or your whole life, is you never have to go to bed hungry. And that took some getting used to. So the first time, and a lot of people don't know this about me, the first time that I stepped on stage for a bodybuilding show was the third time I started dieting. And the first two times I only got a few weeks in, and I was hungry all the time, and I was like, this is fucking terrible. So I stopped. But the third time I decided, okay, you know what, no matter what, I'm gonna make it to the stage. And I did the smartest thing you could do, is go get a coach that knows what they're doing, because that was the difference. First two times I struck out on my own, and then I sat down with a really good coach at the time in the Kingston Belleville area, and that's when I was successful and made it to the stage.
Do you want to cover that?
Do you want to hear that? Yeah. So this is a funny part of that story, and so the woman that was my first, I've only ever had two coaches in my whole life. The first one was the story I'm about to tell, and then the second and final one was John Meadows, and that's a whole. We'll get to that in probably the third part of this series. That was amazing. He was incredible, but Rhonda Quaresma was my first coach at the time, and this is back in 1999. Everybody in the Kingston area specifically, like the guys and girls that were doing really well, were all coached by Rhonda. So she had a great reputation for her athletes always showing up in shape. So I met with her, and keep in mind, I was super duper. Not only had I never touched PEDs, but I was that guy at the gym that had to make sure everybody knew I was drug free. If I was, every time I did anything impressive, I was like, yeah, drug free. And I hate guys like that. Like, good on you. That's amazing. But no more than I need to know that you do CrossFit or that you're vegan or whatever your beliefs are. That's great for you. But I was the guy that was like, did you know I'm drug free? So anyway, I sit down with Rhonda and I said, listen, I introduced myself. I'm from Belleville. I have a lot of friends that take their training really seriously. Everybody says you're amazing. So she was super cool. To this day is still a great friend of mine. And she said, okay, what supplements have you been using? She's like, because I was huge. Like I was 6'1" and 275 with abs at 21 years old and 20 plus inch arms, which are no longer a thing. So she said, what supplements are you using? And what she meant was like, what supplements are you using? And I was like, oh, whey protein and creatine and glutamine, and I take a multi every day. And she was like, okay, that's adorable. That's not what I meant. And I was like, oh, how dare you? So I didn't make a big deal about it, but I was like, I never had, like, I didn't even want to talk about it. And then she goes, okay, that's awesome. But full disclosure, what do you weigh right now? And I was like, 275. And she said, if we do it your way, you're probably going to come in around 215. Like if you want to be brutally conditioned, 215, 218. If we do it my way, 230 plus, 235 plus. And that might not seem like a huge difference, but anybody out there watching, if you've worked hard enough and long enough to put on 12 to 20 pounds of muscle, that is not an overnight thing. That's 20 pounds is not even a 3-year goal. Like that's once after you get through that first couple years where you get your newbie gains, that's a big deal. So giving that away, if the difference between stepping on stage at 230 and then stepping on stage at like 215 would be the difference if somebody was like, oh, how much is that car? Well, it can either be $20,000 or $75,000, but you get the same thing. So, yeah, no, like there's no way I'm giving away. It was the equivalent of $50,000 cash in my brain. That's what I'm getting at. So, I said, okay, you know what? And I made the decision immediately. I didn't need to sleep on it. Like I've been working really hard since I was 13. I put in an honest 9, almost 10 years. Nobody knows what they're doing when they're 13. But by the time I was 17, 18, I was smart. Like I studied training very, very closely. I knew my stuff when it came to nutrition. I knew my stuff when it came to supplements. I took it very seriously. So it probably just as seriously as I do right now. So I made that decision, and I won't get into the details of what I took, but I did my first stack starting 16 weeks out from that show. And it's laughable. When I look back at what was in that, I was still practically drug free. Like it was a very, very modest amount, and that's to Rhonda's credit. She said you don't need to take a whole bunch of crazy crap, make good decisions in the kitchen, work hard in the gym, and that's true. So that was up to that point. Had never touched anything. Did my first, started along down that path. Had no, and full disclosure, I didn't have any side effects or any problems until the show was over. And then I'm going to leave you a little teaser for part 2 of this, because life leading up to the show and then life starting immediately after, that was drastic changes, not what I expected.
So we're doing the best that we can to keep our videos a little bit shorter because we love to train in the gym, and all our videos seem to be over 30 minutes at this point, and we're okay with that. But we're doing the best we can in this little series about our stories to just keep it short, sweet, and to the point. So that's it for today, and we're going to probably do 1 more or 2 more to finish out Tim's transformation story. So thanks so much for being here, and we'll see you on the flip.
Yeah, thank you very much. Anybody that's made it all the way through to this point to hear that story, I appreciate you. Thanks so much for your support, and we'll see you in the next video.
Cheers, guys.
Hey everybody, it's Tim Walsh here, your Vanilla Gorilla. I just wanted to take you through this bit of a collage of pictures that you're looking at right now. There's a few pictures here, mostly taken around 3 weeks out from that first show. I ended up competing on October 30th, 1999 that year. And I weighed in, I forgot to mention this in the video, I weighed in at exactly 230 pounds. So my total weight loss from my heaviest point was 338 down to 230 pounds, or 108 pounds. And then that same year I went down to the Arnold Classic for the first time, and in this picture here you can see me with Scott Steiner. That's Big Papa Pump for you old wrestling fans. I actually got to meet one of my childhood inspirations. And then now you can see the contrast between me at my heaviest and me much happier and healthier on the right, from 338 to 230 pounds. I really hope you've enjoyed this first installment of this short series about my weight loss from 338 down to 230, and how I've managed to keep over 100 pounds off for the better part of 20 years now. Please drop a like, share, and subscribe, and hit me up in the comments section. I would love to hear from any of you out there that are on a similar path or have already gone down that similar journey. Thanks so much. Check us out at vanillagorillacrew.ca and pick up some of that sweet merch.